In philanthropy and donor relations in particular, it's really clear that donors want more. They want more impact, more engagement, more personal. But there is so much work that goes into that. How do we make it actually happen? Welcome to Mythos Stories. I'm Sarah Moise, Chief Stewardship Advocate at Mythos. I'm here with Sarah Villien, a Program Manager at Tulane University, Amanda Feser, the Director of Creative Impact at the University of Nebraska Foundation, and Cheryl McCloskey, Director of Stewardship at Seton Hall University. What does it mean to build a truly custom stewardship program in an institution of higher education? How do you build that? How do you justify it to leadership? What does it take? Sarah and Amanda are in these roles currently doing bespoke donor stewardship. Cheryl and I are here curious about how that happened and what it takes every day. So we're going to kind of plow these guys with questions and see what information we can gather in a really casual professionals chatting. So let's talk about why this conversation is important in the first place. What gaps are we trying to fill here?
The way that our setup is at Tulane is we have like 3 pillars of what we describe our donor relations team as. And so that breaks down to acknowledgement, endowment reporting, and for a long time, we just kind of had extra things that need to get done, things that we're asked to do, consulting, brainstorming, anything really kind of that doesn't fall under those 2 pillars. And so we were able to kind of see that there needed to be something, and that became these specialty stewardship projects. They became one-offs or annual things, but things that we really needed very specific high detail on. And that was really is that we just, like Sarah said, we found a gap. And we were able to see that the work was already there and the staff member was already there. So it was really easy for us to build that out initially, or have the idea initially.
Yeah, cool. Amanda, what about you? Why do you think this conversation is important today?
So I think it's important to have this conversation, this casual conversation with peers to kind of show the the passion and the interests we all have in this field, and this high end and specialized donor stewardship project based stuff. And it's interesting to see kind of what ideas are working for some people and what you'd like to implement at your own shop or as you build it out. So it's kind of just nice to have that kind of it's a very niche field sometimes, and so it's nice to have people that are in the same situation and dealing with the same bandwidth issues or projects that come up, and it's a cool thing to talk to other people about since it is so niche, and as we kind of figure out the best practices in our own areas.
And Cheryl, that's why we're here, right? We don't do enough of this just chatting in our space, right? Moving beyond formal conferences and webinars to this sort of practitioner to practitioner dialogue, right? We don't just listen to each other talk.
Yeah, I think opportunities like this recognize the need to elevate our stewardship strategies. And the best way we can do it is hear what each other is doing.
Yeah. And we're all spread so thin, right? That it's really hard to find the time to make the case, right? And this is a space we can use each other, right, for a sounding board.
Absolutely.
I love that. So what do you guys think is driving this push for super personalized, highly custom donor engagement, in your personal opinion?
I think in an era where everything is a story to be told and meaningful donor engagement is paramount, the universities are recognizing a need to advance their stewardship strategies. And talking about positions like this is really allowing donor relations shops and stewardship shops to bridge the gap between just the data-driven donor relations and the art of making meaningful connections.
Yep, I agree. Anybody else?
I think too, when we look at the life cycle of a donor, some of our donors, and certainly, I work in our principal gift level at Tulane. Some of these donors are long past their general acknowledgments. They're long past basic touch points from the university. They interact with the president quite often. They've been receiving their endowment report for 15 to 20 years. So it kind of just feels like, what's the next step? How are we really thinking outside of the box? How are we meeting them where they like to be met? But how are we moving beyond the basic things that we know we all are doing and they have been getting for years and years and years. So I think it's a really fun challenge, and therefore it's easier to get started with new donors, to get started from the get in this type of very creative, bespoke type of stewardship opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point there, right? These donors have had a lot of access and they've gotten a lot of information about the impacts of their gifts very directly, but not in any systematized way, not a way that we're cataloging in our databases, right? It's been very haphazard. And so to finally pull that together, right, into one position, one person, one purview, really document stuff, right, puts a little bit of polish on everything, makes everything consistent, and really ensures that that donor is directly connected to their impact. Right.
I think also technology drives it a little bit as well. I mean, we see it with our students here on campus. Everything is for the gram, right? And so why would it be any different for our donors? They deserve that creativity and that content as well.
And what a great point, right? Our donors are human beings out in the world, right? They're engaging with the world way outside of our institutions, and they now have an expectation of how content is delivered to them, right? What is the experience of an Amazon shopper, right? Outside of our world, they're getting things fed directly to them based on their preferences and things that corporations have learned about them.
Yep.
Why aren't we delivering content in the same way?
Yeah, I think that you're kind of spot on with the technology kind of leading it. I think as the old way would have been we gotta get the highest end video production. We gotta have this highly produced, piece, and it's gotta have all these different, stylistic things. And after the pandemic, have really laid into organic, self-recorded video, getting those materials straight from those impacted, those like messages from students, those messages from faculty, from researchers, just their experience abroad, maybe a student picture that they, are there for an architectural study abroad program, and they're taking pictures of the architecture that they're finding. I'm using all that organic material and cool, and it makes it more real. It makes it more, it doesn't look overproduced. It doesn't look fake. And like we produce something fakey for this donor that knows that they're seeing, they could follow this student online and see it if they really want, so it's that shift of like, make things real, make them organic, make them authentic. And that's gone a long way. And it's at the tip of our fingers more than it used to be with things like video and content and things. So it's been a really cool change that I've seen in the last 17 years. That was totally different.
Fascinating. We've been talking a lot at Mythos about the role that genuine content is going to play moving forward as we live more and more in this AI generated, right, inauthentic content world. And that we expect there will be a craving for truly human, one-to-one, natural, organic, and authentic content. And I think this is exactly the repercussions of that. Amanda, you started talking a little bit about the nitty-gritties and what content looks like these days. Let's zoom out a little bit. Cheryl, what do you want to know about these roles, especially getting them off the ground?
Yeah. So, I mean, where do you start? How do you get leadership buy-in? What does a job description look like? Those kind of things.
Yeah, let's talk about making the case to leadership. So whether you've done it or not, any recommendations on strategizing there? It's a hard question.
It's definitely tricky. I think the easiest way for us, our shop had tried top level donor programs before in different iterations. And so I think it was kind of twofold in that we really needed the right person to come in, who kind of understood everything that was going on, had worked in multiple different areas. So I think that was a big part of it, like, was the right person at the right time. But I also think we had been having these conversations and our frontline fundraisers did not have the capacity to do like as much as they wanted to do. And so I think that in conversation with senior leadership was then easy to like kind of like pave the way for this role. They were frequently like, but I'm traveling a lot, but I'm getting the basics, but donor relations is doing my endowment report, but then research does this other part. But if I just had 5 more people, if I just had 1 more person, if I just had like 12 more hours in the day, here are the things that I could be achieving. And so because our shop had been doing a lot of these projects, we kind of also already had a portfolio to show, like, this is what happens when one person starts to learn your portfolio and starts working on them in a very specific method. So I think it was really seizing the opportunity, and the need, filling the gap for a need had been discussed over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great point. The sort of proven experience, right? The proven work volume, taking work off of your frontline fundraisers' plates. I used to say that all the time, right? We want them out on the road, talking to people, building relationships, not at their desk in InDesign, not recording videos with students or hunting down faculty members. And why would we not put that position into a whole person, right? And let someone be thinking about that holistically. Amanda, what do you think?
I'm in a kind of an interesting position too, where, you know, I originally, when my position was created, it was really focused on like honor clubs. The good old honor club, the giving, we changed it to a giving society, we've had a million iterations of those type of clubs and recognition structures. Well, I just organically, I was more interested in individualization and one-off. It's my top strength is individualization. So I am extremely passionate about creating a really personalized experience. That's kind of the opposite of a giving society where you've got mass and you have to figure out, thousands of people. So I actually just started, since I was a one-person shop, kind of doing this donor, relations stewardship stuff. I just kind of went that direction and proved how valuable these one-off videos or these impact reports, all these different very specialized projects, and fundraisers get excited. They love to provide that experience for their donors. They love the special, they see more value in that. And so because there's only a certain amount of hours in the day, I think just going down that route automatically caved out, like, this is what we should be doing, the writing, the specialized stuff. And so you just kind of see the other things become less important, and the one-off experiential stuff and project stuff really go to the top of the priority list pretty quickly. And I'm glad that it went that route, because I think there's a lot of value in those things.
It sounds like you both had a lot of say and advocacy in yourselves to create these positions and these opportunities for yourself. Is that accurate?
I'm very lucky that I kind of shaped my position. I was right out of college, and I was hired for, managing giving societies. That was my first job, and I'm still there 17 years later and have shaped it to be something different, because I was able to show the value and have a lot of support above me, and support from fundraisers, and support, showing the kind of success stories of projects. And so I'm really lucky that I was able to thrive and do what I did best.
Great. Have you run into any hurdles, either of you, in this implementation, or?
Yes, I would say, for me, almost picking on your other question and tying this other one back in, the way we approached it is that we had, like, my managers have continued to, like, advocate for me on a senior leadership level. And I was going around the back door and just, like, constantly proving that my work was, like, very highly detailed, was on time, like, really saw that, like, what were the strategic priorities, not only of this fundraiser, but, like, what were our strategic priorities as a university. And so I was able to work through, like, the back door. And I think, like, that was, like, our 1-2 method. I think what have been the challenges were that it's not a position. So it's really hard to kind of explain, like, there are very few examples. This is not a traditional position and advancement. We can't give you a job description. We can show you and, like, it kind of explain it, but, like, it isn't something that, like, we can right away explain to you, like, this is a frontline officer. This is a major gifts person. Like, that's very understandable in an advancement culture. This isn't. So I think it was kind of like selling the idea. Everybody is like, yes, individualized stewardship. Everybody is like, more things, more touch points, more exciting, more excitement, surprise, delight. But it was kind of like, but how do you fill your day up? I think was a lot of our questions. Like, but what do you do all day? What if there's not a project? So I think it was kind of like fleshing that all part out.
Is there ever not a project? I don't think so, right?
No, there's never not a project. And certainly, like, if you think you don't have any projects, somebody else is happy to say, I have 25 donors who would love an extra project. And I think really that kind of, in my specific role at Tulane, has kind of grown out in that I consult quite often. Like, a lot of my day is like, we are thinking of strategy and whether this is going to be turned into something or not. Like, Sarah has come in to be a consultant on what stewardship should align with or how that should arc out for, their strategy or the donor's lifetime or how we're going to close this gift. So I think it's really selling people on something they don't know. They don't know what that means. They don't know what that is.
I'm hearing you all talk a lot about this collaborative environment, right? That there's this desire to shift cultures across advancement so that there's more collaboration, there's more communication, right? We break down some of our silos. And this role is uniquely positioned, right? To have a broad view, to make sure everybody's got the information they need and provide a seamless and exceptional donor experience. Right? It's a really unique value proposition, but there's no ROI, right? You can't pull out data and say, here's where it worked at XYZ institution or why it's worked here. It's a lot more squishy than that.
I was just going to say, my position, my title, Director of Creative Impact, that was shaped by a wonderful manager I have now that kind of dug around and tried to, like Sarah said, it's not like a job description that exists that have that mix of all these different things. And she was able to kind of create that herself. And I love that title. And I really think it's creative impact is what I'm doing. And I really appreciated that kind of was shaped by us together. And I'm proud of that. I just think it's an interesting title that hopefully can help other places kind of with their titles and how they kind of figure out their job descriptions.
And I had heard you say you both are working with development officers and other partners on your teams. Who are the key players and who do you find yourself working with the most?
So my role is specifically with principal gifts. So that is a team that, while I'm not a specific member of, I'm a member of the donor relations team. I work almost exclusively for them and their projects. But overall, the projects that I work on are at the principal gift level. So while, another frontline officer might have a principal gift prospect or donor, I will help on those ones. Likewise, I do a lot of then kind of consulting for like larger, broad things. So we are going to close on like an anonymous gift and we haven't announced it yet, but we need someone to liaison like what stewardship should look like. So then I'll like be the liaison for advancement and donor relations there. Specifically for my role, I also run the gift announcement protocol. So I'm advancements liaison to university communications, which is then a really, really big component. I feel like that relationship and that kind of section of my job has really broadened everything else. Like I have such a pulse then on what is happening at the university, and what is our messaging and what is the strategy on that. That has really been my biggest partner, I would say, in how I've developed this role, and make the choices that I make, in terms of strategic planning.
Amanda, could you talk a little bit about your non-advancement specific partners? I'm curious who else across your institution you work with.
My supervisor and are the lead of our department does a lot of, her role is a lot on our top 20 donors and creating very specialized stewardship plans for them. And oftentimes she will be in these strategic meetings about what needs to happen and things. And honestly, I love that I get to have the baton handed to me for the project, the meat of, whatever that is. And she's a good strategic partner. And she's with these fundraisers and, or leadership and figuring out what's the best time in this year that we're going to do this. And then I can run with the projects. And when I run with the projects, I'm often working with, the giving data in our system. And I got to make sure, that I'm getting a clear picture of all the things they've given to, if I'm going to talk about their impact, that I look at their funds that they've created and that information is accurate. So I work a lot with the data, like I think we all do. So that's good to have a strong partnership with, the people that are managing that data, or the people that are in charge of creating new funds, that I understand what those funds do and things like that. And then there is a lot of campus partnership through fundraisers often, and sometimes directly, but we are, like I said, an independent nonprofit that's kind of away from our 4 campuses in our own entity. So I'm not going, down the road, a little bit to a different building and asking that faculty member or whatever, or if I'm not within that college themselves. So it is like leaning on fundraisers for like the best person to talk about impact. If I'm going to create something and really share that impact, using them as like the expert in their campus area, and kind of figuring out who I should get that impact data from and that impact testimonial or the student video. But I am digging through a lot of data and student names and, getting in there myself, which is, I don't think, maybe as known, because I'm the creative output at the end is kind of, fun and exciting and pretty. And, there's a lot of going through and looking at all these names and finding out maybe where they are today, or how many student recipients have got this, so I can show them a big picture about what they've done. So I work a lot with the data and our fundraisers very closely. And then I wouldn't say that I'm very regularly leaning on partners in graphic design or marketing communications as much, though they exist and are incredible at their jobs. I try to be my one-stop shop as much as I can. But this year I have learned that after, proving our value and proving all of the value in creating amazing stewardship, I've actually been asked to reach out a little bit, ask them if you want a more high-end publication created, or ask if you, and yes, we can't do that for every piece. And I have learned a lot this last quarter about kind of working with some internal partners to kind of get more, maybe more a lengthy story created that I can't spend the time to try to write for a donor, but they are specialized in their writing. And so I've leaned on a little bit on some people in marketing and communications that I hadn't previously, but it's gone really well.
So let's get into the daily grind. It's a really good segue, right? What does your job look like every day? What are you spending your time on? I'm talking about like relationship management versus creating deliverables versus strategic planning, internal coordination, approvals. Talk to me about how you prioritize. Not that there's an easy answer to that for any of our jobs. But where do you tend to spend most of your time?
It is truly a position where like not every day is the same. In that you're, based on what is going on, either with the direct fundraisers that you're working with, so whether that's like portfolio reviews. I review portfolios once a week or every other week for certain other officers, so that I'm constantly up to date with, we're going to have this touch point. We actually finished this conversations about closing a gift. So like, what are we lining up? So I think portfolio reviews, and then that kind of fleshes out then what is strategies that we're working on overall. What are the projects that we need to do? What are the touch points that are about to happen? So like, how are we like lining up what's going to follow that? And then honestly, I spend a lot of time consulting with other people on like whether this is going to flesh out to be something, or these are the strategies that I think you need to consider. So it really is very much different day to day, different month to month. What's going on at the university? What are the downtimes for our students? What are the big pushes? When do we want to pull off? And likewise, like, when do we want to pull off? Like, when are we putting the brakes on because we know other bigger things are happening, or there needs to be a break in communication for a bit. So I think it's really looking day to day, but you're constantly looking at the month ahead and the ask ahead and what is next year and what are the president's priorities and things like that.
Fascinating. Sarah, you said something about, whether you need to put the brakes on, and it reminded me, particularly in the last handful of years, we've seen a lot of moments of national headlines that have caused the university to say, no internal communications, right? We've got a message that we need to send to our community before anybody else says anything. Amanda, how do you find this role is in pivoting to those sort of something suddenly changed in the entire universe, the world, our national headlines that now affects your work or some deadline you were going to meet today?
Being that there is so much infrastructure in place on the marketing and the communication side, and I'm really grateful that we are a large enough shop in that area at the foundation that there, as budgets shrink for state funding and all these different things that are happening at the university, that there is an incredible team of strategic communicators that are out of the front lines creating all of these things. And so it's the strong communication from them to know, these are some things to focus on or not focus on. But I'm lucky that that there are those people that are really focused on that in their field, and they're the experts on that PR communication side of things. I think you can look at it though of, even if it's not national news, if it's something is happening in that family, if there has been a death, we pivot. We were working on something very recently, had a plan in place to do like an impact narrative video about this donor's impact on the University of Nebraska. They passed away before we got it off the ground. We are pivoting to share that with his widow and foundation, and to build that next relationship with this board, as he has passed away and his wife is still active, but the board, I think, will driving a lot of what they will support next. We had to pivot and figure out, this is now a legacy story. This is talking about his legacy and what he did at the University of Nebraska. And so it just changes that message and that empathy for the family and all of that kind of goes with your plans in place that need to adjust.
And one of the things I appreciate most about working in donor relations is that I've gotten to be, or I have to be, an expert on kind of things that are going around in the university. So what's the hot topic this week? Is it talking about the law school, or is it talking about the ROTC trip to Vietnam, or what is it? And I immerse myself in it and I then report on it, right? But I think also as I grow in this field, I'm learning I also have to be the expert on when I need to reach out for help and the expert on who to reach out to. So I might not know the answer, and the law school is, 15 minutes up the road. I don't get there often, but I know who I need to call there to get that help. And I know when I have to take a pause and reach out to campus partners and things like that. So it's not only just being the expert on the institution, but it's also being the expert on knowing when to say when.
And those relationships, right? Building those relationships across campus, those are key to doing all donor relations work, right? Not just your finger on the pulse, but your finger on who has their finger on the pulse.
Yes.
Cheryl, you mentioned job descriptions. What is it that you want to hear from these guys about the sort of logistics?
Well, I'd love to know what skills or qualities are needed to build this kind of position. What tools do you use every day? I mean, I literally work with a designer on our team. He's like our adopted brother, and I send him squares and triangles, and he sends me back pieces that make me burst into tears. So I don't have fancy tools at my avail besides Mythos. I have squares and triangles. You guys obviously must have more than that. What else do I need?
And I love the question about skills, right? What skills would you put into a job description that aren't in your job description today, or if you were writing one for someone, you would put in?
I think there originally, again, when my position 17 years ago was created, I don't think any of the design skills or video, those just technology skills mixed with creative skills were in that originally, because again, I kind of shaped it and was able to shape that. But there is so many tools out there that can help if you have, a little bit of a talent or eye for what looks nice, or what, Canva is just like, has been like a godsend with Canva, InDesign, but again, not on the high level graphic design area, level, but there's just so many Canva and different things like that, or like simple video editing tools, have been really, really crucial in creating things efficiently, because I want to be as efficient as possible and a one-stop shop. If I have created a very pleasing look in like a piece, or I do a lot of digital impact, like almost like clickable presentations that I provide to my fundraisers to give to their donors. I want to be efficient. I want it to look good. So once I maybe create a look that I've really enjoyed and the donor, it went well, there's no downside in repurposing that many more times for other donors. Why not? Why recreate this from scratch each time? So I've had a lot of success with creating things in Canva, or, and just getting them even better each time, because you figure out what works and, what you can add to it, and the technology changes. So I jumped right in over the pandemic with Canva, and now I'm like, I can't even imagine not having that tool, which is really helpful.
Well, and Sarah, you're such a strategic thinker. Talk a little bit about those sort of like core value, core professional skills. I'm thinking like project management, organization, problem solving, attention to detail, confidentiality. What's important in this role that isn't necessarily about the output, but about the input?
Yes, definitely. I mean, my first ones always are like high attention to detail, very strategic thinking. And so I think a lot of times listening is honestly one of the best skills you can have, in that these are not my donors. I mean, they are my donors, but they are not my donors. I don't meet with them. I don't sit down and hear from them. It's art. I'm always like one step away at least. So therefore, like my listening skills, like I almost feel like I'm talking to my kid, but my listening skills need to be highly attuned. I really need to kind of like understand. And so oftentimes when I'm starting a project or I'm being asked to consult on something, I'll say, why don't you just tell me the story? Like, why don't you just explain to me like everything you know about your donor, or this, what happened in this thing that we're trying to write, or this project we want to get started. And I will digest from there and be able to ask you questions. And so I think that listening skill is really, really vital, because the fundraiser probably also has not picked up on something. They're working day in and day out with the person. They've heard this story that this donor has told a million times, and they always hear it, but that's the one piece that you're going to pick up on to know we're going to create an entire strategy around this one thing. Like, he loves reading. He loves sharing books with his donors. Great. Well, we have a program like that at Tulane. So now we're going to bring him into that program. Small things like that. So I think that is for sure my biggest strategy tip. But I also think it's really the ability to like remove yourself. I think we all know that in donor relations, it is sometimes a thankless job, and you're not closing the gift. Like, the endowment is not named after you. You're working behind the scenes, which is, personally, I find a privilege. But you really have to kind of like take yourself out of that. You're providing a product for someone as well. So like, it might not hit with that frontline fundraiser that you're giving it to. It might not hit that time with the donor. And so I think kind of keeping that balance of immense like empathy and understanding and wanting to strive to make this person feel truly, truly the immense gratitude we have, while also being like, if they don't like that, that's fine. Like, maybe they were really busy when you sent them this project, and so they just sent back thanks, and that was it. And you were hoping they were going to write you a giant tribute about how wonderful this was. And so I think being able to keep that level head of, I'm going to do my best, and like sometimes it's not going to hit, and that's okay. And I think that is a big necessary component of somebody in this type of role.
Cool.
I work with two amazingly talented student workers. One's a grad assistant and one's a work study student. And I've tried to make it a point because of exactly what you said, Sarah. We're in the point in our careers that we're good. We understand sometimes it's thankless. We don't need to hear the accolades or that we closed the gift or whatever. But I remember my AVP or my VP showing this slide about how many touch points, how many FTEs were involved in closing a $1 million gift. And they broke it down all the way to the envelope stuffer. And so now I think of my student workers who to me are more than envelope stuffers, right? But we make sure we tell them, hey, this happened. Remember 3 months ago you helped us with this? We want you to know that this happened and it was made possible because of you. So as we mentor the next generation, those who are going to be in our roles after us, I think it's important to start building that because we got it the old fashioned way from the grit and being in the trenches, right? But allowing them to see their wins in their day is so important for the next generation.
Internal stewardship is so close to my heart. It is so important that we treat our colleagues the way we would treat our donors.
I could not agree more. You really hit on something that means a lot to me personally. I feel like showing gratitude, I mean, our job is gratitude. Our job is thanking people and making them feel good. We should do that with everyone we work with, from the gift processors to the interns to every single person that's involved. And I really have such gratitude for my fundraising colleagues when they send me that follow-up. They even forward the email from the dia or from the donor, and it says, you know, what a cool piece. That's such a neat thing to see about my family or whatever. I always make a huge deal to that fundraiser and say, thank you so much for including me in the whole picture. You don't have to. So I really appreciate seeing how it did hit, but also just showing the gratitude and showing, we always say everybody has a piece in every gift at the foundation. That's like in our mission, which really does mean a lot because every data point that's entered into our system, if it's not correct, then I can't do my job. The deal, fundraiser can't do their job, all of that. So I think that's really, 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 really true and resonates a lot with me. And I think about our one of our intern positions has always kind of been focused on helping collect our scholarship thank you notes. There's a lot of physical ones that are still sent to us. And just the collection, the scanning, the inputting of that information in the donor in our database so it's connected to the donor, and then actually sending that out to the donor. I always drive home the fact that scholarship thank you note could make or break like how they feel about their donation to their scholarship. You putting that in an envelope and getting that to the right address, huge piece of donor communication that is like really crucial. And that's an intern. I mean, crucial. So I totally respect what you're saying, Cheryl, about that.
Don't forget the little guys, all your partners, all the way across.
I feel like I'm still a little guy. I mean, we all need. A thank you goes a long way.
And that evidence of impact, absolutely. Let's zoom out a little bit. How have you decided what donors get this VIP treatment, right? Sarah, you're in Principal Gifts, you're embedded in Principal Gifts, but that's a huge portfolio. I happen to know Tulane has at least 3 full-time fundraisers just in Principal Gifts. So it can't just be a giving level. What else do you factor in?
So for me, it's really like these portfolio reviews. If we're able to then look at what's happening. So-and-so is a snowbird. So like this is the time that they're in Florida. And so they really like to be with their grandkids and their great grandkids and their friends. So like this is not a time we're necessarily like pushing asks or visits. Like we really understand that that's a respectful time. Like that's when they like to do that. So that would not be somebody we're working on. But at the same time, we're thinking then ahead. Like, okay, they also are always at this big Tulane event. So we're going to prepare something in 4 months. We know that an officer is thinking about making a new ask. And so that will going to come down the pipeline in like 3 months. Like, what are we doing ahead of time so that we're not making like cold calls? What are we making sure that person's feeling good? What are people's anniversaries? and birthdays. What are important events that are happening that might not necessarily be something they give to, but they were a huge part of the sailing team. And the sailing team is having all these great wins lately. We just wanted to share that with you because we remember that that's something that was really important to you for your time at our university. So I think for us, it's really like constantly talking through people's portfolios because we know tons of stuff is going to pop up. That's going to happen all the time. But how are we working constantly on an annual basis?
That's a really interesting approach, and I hadn't thought about it so much as it's not necessarily a group of donors, but a group of moments in time, a group of projects or experiences that you may want to be communicating to a certain type of donor. Amanda, is that kind of how you think and work with your frontliners too?
It's a mix of a lot of people focused on the strategic planning of with their team of people that know that may be looking at milestones or milestone birthdays or giving project anniversaries. A lot of working together across the organization about kind of timing on these. And like I said, my leader of my department works a lot on kind of planning donor stewardship planning tools and things that she uses. So it's a mix of being pulled into those plans and a mixture of being my own project manager, where I'm very lucky that I have they can fundraisers can come to me directly, and I'm not I'm not just, though my focus is principal gifts, and I really do need to focus mostly on principal giving levels of donors. I am kind of the shop that people can come and get consulting with, and maybe it's a simple piece I can and do in like 20 minutes that's going to make them really have something valuable to take on a visit. And maybe they aren't to that huge principal giving level yet, but it's that consulting and that working with directly with those fundraisers that want to use my skills to get to their whatever final piece they need to their donor. And so it's an interesting mix of being pulled into other things and just being asked directly by a fundraiser that knows their donor and wants me to create something. And oftentimes it's, you did this for them or for someone else, can we do the same type of thing this time for this other donor? And I love that because I'm like, yes, you know how that project worked, you know what we need to figure out, and let's do it again. Let's make some other donor happy with it. So yeah.
And how do you keep track of all those little unique things you find out about your donors or your portfolio, your folks' portfolios? Are you doing individual stewardship plans, tracking things in the CRM, or does this all live in your head in conversations and emails? And is that what you would recommend?
We had some initial hesitation about like individual stewardship plans. And I mean, like, not necessarily like the thinking of them, the actual like documenting of them for like a plethora of reasons. So I think that we have kind of like the way I have been structured that is when I'm like a copious note taker. So I'm like constantly like writing notes and then like uploading them to a box file so like they could be accessed by anyone. I always think about if like you're hit by a bus tomorrow, like, and someone was like, okay, I gotta go in their files, like, can they kind of suss out what's going on? So I try to take like a lot of copious notes, a lot of follow-ups, then in my emails, things like that. And then working in a portfolio spreadsheet, kind of what are like just very quick, like one-liners of like what are the strategies we're working on, whether that's then or like right now for a specific project, or that we're trying to keep in mind, like something is brewing there and we're not quite sure what it is, or this donor is trying to suss out something that they're interested in, but they're not quite telling us all the information. So we're going to keep coming back to that. But we, have not adopted anything that was a specific individualized stewardship plan or project management software. So I think that has kind of been that would be a pivot from what I originally thought we should be doing, or the style that I like to do things in. And it really just kind of like organically worked itself out.
Amanda, anything to add on documenting or not documenting?
I really think a lot of the information about donors, I hope that the fundraisers are putting that or communicating that in some way, because I'm so on the periphery of who they are and what they're interested in. I really am pulled in for showing it at the end. I'm not very much as Sarah is more. I think you're kind of involved in more of the asks and things, like really kind of, we have some development communications professionals that are kind of within for proposal writing and things like that. I think they are good partners sometimes in hearing what was promised at the beginning, or what were we telling them that we want to do with this project. Now that it's funded, did those things happen? Well, I didn't write that thing, so I would like to hear what was originally done. And the fundraiser is usually pretty connected to the goals that we want to show that we met, or so I just have a very different role in finding out stuff about donors. It's usually not enough to, I get to hear the cool things about them, and then it goes into my work, but I don't know as much about them to document it, I guess.
Fascinating.
I think
Okay,
that,
I want to hear a little. Sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
No, I was going to say we're clearly amongst greatness here, and we celebrate our donors, we celebrate our students, we celebrate our institutions, but now I think we should celebrate ourselves. And I'd love to hear Amanda and Sarah, like, let's brag a little bit. What are some amazing projects you've been involved in or you've done because you've been in this position?
The amount of times I'm like brought to the table, I think is like the part of me that has really made myself, like, it's a huge point of pride for me, but I think it's kind of like is helping break my imposter syndrome, in that I'm like, I wouldn't have been called to this room if I didn't know what I was talking about. And like, sometimes I'm like the only person who's not a vice president. But my value was shown in my work, and truly, I think in my strategic planning for Tulane and advancement. So I think to be able to be called into so many rooms or be asked to advise really on something that I'm not going to end up having anything to do with once I leave this room, I think that has been my biggest point of pride. I think to constantly be like, and would you mind, or like, who you really need to talk to at the university is Sarah Villien. So I think that has now is really my big pride pin.
That's amazing.
That's huge. What about you, Amanda?
I definitely take a lot of pride in being that it's kind of like, oh, it's time for an Amanda Feser project. It's time to bring in something really cool. It's time to bring in something that I know will be creative and will be with the donors, interests and passions in mind. And I'm really lucky, again, that I have great colleagues that know their donors. My projects would not be possible without knowing that they are passionate about X, and then thinking creatively on how do we show them then the impact. And their styles, formal, informal, old, young, digital, not digital. Will this be, so there's so much that goes into the knowing of the donor. And so I just get really excited when it's like, they know it's time for an Amanda Feser project, and let's get this on your books, and or if it's a yearly thing that we maybe now do each year that they love so much that they come back again and again, and they say, let's update the report from last year, and then we'll add in this and this, and it can only get better and better each year. But there are a number of special projects that are really fun and exciting that I'm always going to be proud of, that I'm always excited to share with other people. So if you guys want to know about some of the specialty pieces, I'd be happy to share kind of some of those. And with the hope.
What's your favorite Amanda Feser project? Tell me.
So I have a couple that are my favorite. One of which, I don't know how we kind of came to this thought, but my colleague and my manager was like, have you ever seen those press club caricatures, where it has like a bunch of the buildings from the person's town, it might be on the wall of a press club or whatever. And I was like, I know what you're talking about. I think we can do that for donors. So we did win the grand gold case for these caricature projects that I think other people could implement. We are lucky we have somebody in town that's an alum a woman artist that's just really talented, and she can create caricature imagery about all these different things that I guide her with. So I couldn't do it with her without her, and she wouldn't know the context of all these different things that have impacted the donor. But there's a, his journey across Nebraska and his impact with the state capitol and all these different things graphically, drawn, and him drawn as a caricature. It's just, those were just such a fun piece that we now kind of lean on, like, it's time for a caricature piece. So those are just something that again, not for very much money. So it's just a cool thing that people had never seen before. The donors were like, whoa, that's really cool. Another thing that I really enjoyed, I've done a couple of these that are very simple, is to do like a kid's book for a donor. One of which is somebody that supported a literacy center for children at our College of Education. And it was just as simple as so-and-so loves this. So-and-so, just very simple design, very simple with some imagery. And at the end, it's Nebraska loves donor. And it just, just a little board book. I mean, $100 at the most. So it's just those kind of, I love turning something in and creating something tangible a lot of times with something that's created digitally. I like doing that. And so those are just a couple. And then the experiential type things of just taking something that's already like a vendor already does well and fixing it and, manipulating it online better than their product, I guess, with their tools, like personalized ice cream pints. You can just order personalized ice cream pints from a company, great product, but they allow you to upload JPEGs. So I was able to make my own labels, ice cream flavors off of, cherry chocolate Husker hunk for one of these, with a retro picture of this guy who played in the 70s, and he loves ice cream and he's a College of Business donor. So it's just like fun things like that. You could just get him a personalized pint, but uploading the picture, they allow you to do that. So why not make your own label and put that on there? Again, using Canva to create something. And then, so those are just fun touches that I kind of are points of my excitement that I love to show.
I think we all want a pint of that cherry Husker.
Cherry
Husker
chocolate
hunk.
Husker hunk. Yes.
I
It was
love
very
it.
hunky donor.
Sarah, do you have a favorite project? And I'd love to hear how you came up with it. How did it come to fruition? What was the sort of start to finish process?
Yeah, I was trying to think as Amanda was talking. One that I feel like is just turned out to be something that was like, I think as Amanda has touched on, something that we kind of like thought about, and we were like, I think it's a great idea, and it really bloomed into something else. Is Tulane has a recovery center, so we have that for our all of our students, including our graduate students. And so we had a donor who funded a sober spring break and a sober Mardi Gras break, since we generally have a week off for Mardi Gras. And so they were really fun. Like, they went to the beach, and then they like went to Houston or different places like that. So we're kind of thinking like, how do we, continue the anonymity that they would like, but how do we like really show the impact? And it turned out that the students were really happy to share. Like, they thought it was such an impactful thing to them, and it was so special. They really, really wanted to share. So we created almost an Adobe Express webpage. Adobe Express is something we use quite often. It's free with our Adobe subscription, and it's very user-friendly on kind of creating these web pages that can be scrolled and easily shared with a lot of donors. And as Amanda has said previously, something that's easy to repurpose, which is, I think, what we're always thinking as well. So we're able to like weave together their stories about their life and the pictures of this trip and what it meant like to be at Tulane, and a place that they loved so much and that meant so much to them, that they felt was feeding them in a very different way, like was feeding them in so many different ways. But this was something that was very, very different. And so it's turned out to be like this what we initially thought was a great piece, and was not a heavy lift, but it was turned out to be a really, really impactful one that we're continuing to repeat and think about how to build upon and expand upon. So I think that one was such I mean, you say the story and you're like, this is going to mean a lot, but it just didn't feel like a heavy lift. It didn't feel like it was hard. It just, it just turned into something that was so beautiful and meant so much that I think that one is always one that sticks with me.
Beautiful. So tell us a little bit, as we're sort of wrapping up here, how are you proving that all this work is paying off, right? What does success mean in these bespoke deliverables, particularly if someone like Cheryl is looking to build a program? What metrics are you even going to, hold yourself to or look against?
I think for us, the metric is, how do you feel about Tulane? Like, how do you feel about our university? Everyone has had a donor, or you yourself have been asked from different organizations you've previously donated to, where it kind of just feels like you're being asked and you're not really getting anything back. Your personality is not featured, what you liked about your time there. It almost just feels like it's just a solicitation only. And so I think when we're able to have donors who don't feel that way, who are like, if anything, it's the opposite. I'm hearing all the time about the School of Liberal Arts, and that just brings me back so much. Or every year to get to see, get sent the video of the football athletes running the stadium for their first time, like, reminds me of when I did it. And like, that's so meaningful that's constantly brought up to me every year. So I think that is the biggest measure, is how do people feel like Tulane interacts with them as well? How do we feel like we're incorporating them into our lives and us into their lives? That does not include an ask, that doesn't include the next gift proposal. And so I think to be able to make sure that either we're turning that relationship around or that we're elevating it so much that to us, and this is how what I explain, is like, that is the ROI. The way that you speak about us is the ROI.
Amanda, do you have any? Those are very soft metrics, right? And beautiful things. And I think there are ways to track them, right? We have to be a little bit creative about what is the growth or change and evolution of a relationship mean on paper. But Amanda, is there any harder metrics, those sort of quantitative, anything?
In my role, I try to check off a number of, top, say there's with these top plans, like, I'm hoping, that I'm at least crossing off a lot of the deliverables that I, was asked to do. I'm always crossing them off. And that themselves, the plans themselves, making those for the top 20 and keeping those up, that's a lot of work for our department. And so making sure that those are, accomplished is a part of that. And there's steps in our system, like, that we have to, that they're outstanding. If they're not checked off, they're showing red, they're saying this hasn't happened. So those are always a good safeguard. But again, that's only a very small portion of our donor base. But also, I it's a lot of qualitative too. It's a lot of, let's do another Amanda project. Let's, I want to do another one because this went so well. It's that kind of thing. And so you just know that it's obviously working if the fundraisers are coming back and wanted to do a bunch of more things, and even newer ones that, are learning how to use you and how to work with you. That clearly it's a value to people. So it's definitely a lot of qualitative for sure. The tough part of donor relations, right?
And to your point, right, just the number of requests you're getting every year, right? That is such good evidence of the need for and justification for this position. Cheryl, anything else Cheryl, anything else we haven't touched on that you want to learn from these guys or know about?
Yeah, I guess I just have one more question. What's missing from your job description, or if you were writing this differently, like, what do you wish you included?
It's a great question.
I think in the forever donor relations comment of 5 to 20 more people, 5 to 100 more people, I definitely think, I have been able to carve out the position that I like. And so I think that part has somewhat worked itself out as I've been developing it. But it really is it really is hands on the deck. So while I think we have done a great job in like bridging the gap between different partners, different parts of the university, what one person can do and what 5 people can do is just different. So I think that that's kind of the next growth opportunity for us, is how are we building upon this? And then later, how are we building this out of principal gifts? And how are we moving this into major gifts? And how does that look different? And how are we moving this to a first-time donor experience? Like, how are we building upon that? But the truth is that it can't be built with one person. So I think that's the dream.
I couldn't agree
Anything
more.
to add, Amanda, before we sign off?
I could not agree more with Sarah. I think with my role, a lot of it can't be mass produced or operationalized yet. Again, we have like some great ideas and products that I create. If you were to want to operationalize them more, you would definitely need more people, and without losing the individualization, I think is key. Like, you don't want to mass produce something and put it through a template and have it lose all personalization and organic nature of it and all that. So it's figuring out, when people love what you do, awesome, but then they want to produce it for more without losing what made it great in the beginning. So that's just a challenge that we face. And if there is more segmentation of donor groups that need X touch points that are, important, going back to segmenting donors and using somebody to do more mass things, that isn't necessarily my greatest strength. So you would need more staff too if you were gonna try to if you were gonna try to do that with a lot of different people. So more people too.
Yes, always more people supporting the front line, right? Cheryl, do you feel like you got a half decent roadmap of where to go from here?
I gotta tell you, Sarah, this has been such a great conversation, and I think my favorite part of it was when Sarah and Amanda's faces absolutely lit up when they got to talk about the highlights of their job. So it's great to see 2 colleagues across the country who just feel so rooted and connected to the work they do every day, because I know that I do here as well. So thank you both for sharing and letting me pick your brains. Good luck as we keep moving and turning the pages in this career.
Yeah, you brought a tear to my eye. I think we are all deeply passionate about the roles that we have in donor relations because it's really near and dear to our hearts. I've always said I think there's something in our DNA, right? Mm-hmm. There's something that is built into a human that makes them a good donor relations professional. I don't know exactly what it is, but you either are or you aren't. And yeah, it was just delightful to watch these incredible women and professionals just expound upon their jobs and their, where we spend most of our time every day. Thank you all for joining me. This was a delightful conversation, and I hope we get to have it again soon.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one.
I bet you're all the best gift givers in your family too, aren't you?
Oh, probably.
So true. So true.
If you were going to put a weird skill is donor relations, especially like one-off creativity things, you're the best gift giver in your family. You always know what everybody would want, the best thing for them. So I think that's what we do sometimes.
I love that. And a good thank you note writer. We'll always take that. All right, you all. Thank you so much. This has been a delight.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Hi, Joey. How do you do?